This session will talk about minimum wages, how and when you should get overtime, what breaks and meal periods are required, holidays and vacation time, and when you should get a final paycheck when you leave a job. We'll also remind you about how and who to report a problem with any of these. Let's start with minimum wage. We touched on this before. The federal minimum wage, which hasn't been updated since 2009, is $7.25 an hour. The good news is that states and even cities can pass their own minimum wage that is better than the federal minimum wage. Although 20 states follow the federal minimum wage of $7.25 an hour for their workers. The highest minimum wage in the U.S. is paid in Washington, D.C. The next highest minimum wages are paid in the states of Washington and California. Oregon's minimum wage is not too far behind. Let's look at Oregon's minimum wage. Remember BOLI, the Bureau of Labor and Industries? In addition to being the state agency that protects your rights around discrimination and harassment, they also make sure that Oregon employers pay the state's minimum wage. You can see that Oregon's minimum wage depends on where you live. The minimum wage is highest in the Portland metro area, $15.95 an hour. It is $14.70 an hour in smaller counties and outside of Portland's urban growth boundary. Think farmland. The lowest minimum wage, $13.70 an hour, is in Oregon's least populated counties. But you can see that even in those counties, the minimum wage is almost twice as much as a federal minimum wage of $7.25 an hour. Oregon's minimum wage adjusts every July 1st based on the rate of inflation during the previous year. Let's go back to BOLI, the Bureau of Labor and Industries, to see what Oregon state laws say about overtime and time allowed for taking meal and rest breaks during work hours. Let's start with overtime. BOLI says that you must be paid overtime, which is 1.5 times your regular rate of pay. Overtime is paid when you work more than 40 hours a week. So, if you are paid $18 an hour and you work 42 hours in a week, you will be paid $27 an hour for the 2 hours you worked beyond 40 hours. Manufacturing or agricultural jobs have different overtime regulations. Some employers, often if there is a union, pay overtime anytime you work longer than an 8-hour day. Meals and rest breaks are also required by state law. If you are working an 8-hour shift, you must receive an unpaid 30-minute meal break and 2 paid 10-minute rest breaks. Again, employers may give you longer rest breaks, often 15 minutes, but the law only requires 10 minutes. What if you work more or less than 8 hours in a day? Here's a chart that shows what you will receive for shorter or longer shifts. You can find all this information and more on the BOLI website. Do you get holidays off or get paid extra for working them? What about paid time off for vacations? This depends on whether or not your employer has a policy to provide holiday and vacation pay. If you have a union or the employer has an established policy about holiday or vacation pay, you will typically get additional pay or time off during holidays, and you may also earn vacation hours. Otherwise, there is no requirement that employers provide holiday pay or vacation time. Some of you may have heard the term PTO, which stands for paid time off. Typically, this is a combination of time earned each pay period that can be used for sick leave or vacation time off. This time is put in a leave bank for you to use as needed. PTO can be used for sick leave, vacation time, or other personal reasons. When you leave a job, and if you haven't used all the time in your PTO bank, it may or may not be paid out on your final paycheck. This again depends on the employer's policies or if you have a union contract. What happens when you leave your job? Oregon law has strict requirements about when you receive your last paycheck. Here are the rules. If you quit with less than 48 hours notice, your paycheck is due within 5 business days or on the next regular payday, whichever comes first. If you quit with at least 48 hours notice, your final check is due on your last day of employment, unless that day is a weekend or a holiday. In that case, your check is due on the next business day. If you are let go or fired, your final paycheck is due by the end of the next business day. If an employer and worker mutually agree to terminate the relationship, the check is due by the end of the following business day.